Now, in today's exclusive film, campaign groups are calling on the NHS to do more to help patients who are trying to get medical cannabis. They claim that since legalisation last year, there have been no new NHS prescriptions for medical cannabis containing the two main components of the cannabis plant, CBD and THC. In the meantime, private cannabis clinics are opening in the UK, and the private sector is offering patients what they cannot get on the NHS. The costs of that can run to hundreds of pounds a month. Here's Sofia Bettiza's report.
This is medical cannabis. It's been legal in the UK for almost a year.
I really can't imagine my life without cannabis.
But there's a problem.
Nothing's happened, nothing's changed.
People are not getting it on the NHS. And as a result, private clinics are opening up.
We can be a lifeline for patients in need.
But this comes at a cost.
It's outrageous and cruel that patients are having to spend so much of their own money.
So why did the government legalise medical cannabis if the NHS isn't prescribing it? And are private cannabis clinics the only option for patients? Medical cannabis was made legal in November 2018. Many with conditions like epilepsy, chronic pain and MS got their hopes up.
Today's announcement is so special.
They thought this would open up their treatment options, but that hasn't happened. And in this vacuum, the private sector has seen a gap in the market.
I'm on my way to a private cannabis clinic that's about to open in London. It looks like patients with chronic conditions are resorting to places like this because they say it's impossible to get a prescription on the NHS.
Patients who come to this clinic need to be approved by a specialist doctor before they can get a prescription.
So there are some conditions for which I think there's good evidence for cannabis to be useful. So you'd have to have one of those conditions, like pain, for example, or anxiety, or nausea and sickness in the context of chemotherapy, or epilepsy.
The problem? It's very expensive.
Consultation fee to the patient is a fairly standard amount of £250. Then on top of that, when they receive the prescription from their chemist, they'll have to pay something like £600 to £800 per month for the prescription.
Most people can never afford this. Do you think you're exploiting patients?
No, absolutely not exploiting patients at all. And this is the only way patients who are in significant need can get access to this medicine. And that's very sad. It's the only way they can get the medicine they deserve.
But it's people like these who suffer. Charlotte has brain damage and epilepsy. Her mother Cheryl has been trying to get cannabis on the NHS, but was refused twice. She was told it was because she hadn't tried all options available, and it was too expensive for the NHS to prescribe it.
I think it's absolutely disgusting that anyone is having to pay to go private and get a private prescription. The thought of having to pay that on a regular basis, on a monthly basis to fulfil it.
Would you be able to afford it?
I wouldn't be able to afford to sustain a private prescription on a long-term basis at all, no. I mean, I'm a single mother looking after my daughter. I do work, I don't receive any benefits myself.
And the problem is not lack of supply.
About 3/4 of all medical cannabis that's imported into the UK comes into this facility. They sort it, package it, and deliver it to patients and pharmacists across the country.
It sounds straightforward, but it isn't. The medicine has to go through a lot of rigorous checks, and it takes about 8 weeks to obtain it after it's prescribed. They only import the exact amount they need to fulfill their prescriptions. And that's what makes it so expensive.
And how much would this be?
Something like that is in the region of £500-ish.
£500 for this? And it only lasts for 1 month?
The plant is grown in a controlled environment to ensure it has specific levels of chemicals to treat health conditions.
How many prescription requests have you got since cannabis was made legal last year?
We've received approximately 100 prescriptions so far. All of them have come from the private sector. I think it's fair to say that the NHS hasn't prescribed any cannabis to date.
The two most important chemicals in the cannabis plants are THC and CBD. THC is the part of the cannabis plant that makes people feel high, whereas CBD doesn't have the mind-altering effects that cause that high. But campaign groups say limiting medicine to products that contain only CBD isn't enough. They want access to a wider variety of cannabis-based medicines, some of which contain THC. Like Chelsea, she treats her epilepsy with cannabis. Her vape contains THC and CBD. She says she hasn't had a single seizure since she started using it.
It's completely changed my life. I really can't imagine my life without cannabis. I really feel so grateful that I found this medicine. You know, I've seen cannabis transform people's lives.
The only reason Chelsea can get cannabis is that she lives in New York, and she's brought her medicine with her, while her sister Tamsin, who has a much more severe form of epilepsy, can't get a prescription on the NHS because she lives in the UK.
So what would Tamsin's life have been like if she'd been given cannabis as a baby? Maybe she wouldn't be living in full-time care now. You know, maybe her mental age wouldn't be of a 13-year-old. It shouldn't be about where you're located, you know, and that's what we're seeing with my sister and I, where I live in the US and I have access because of my address and she doesn't because of her address.
So why did the government decide to make medical cannabis legal if the NHS isn't prescribing it?
I don't think the government had done its homework, if I'm perfectly honest. The government raised people's expectations that following legalisation, medicinal cannabis would become readily available. It hasn't. If anything, it's become more difficult for people to obtain it.
Is the UK government failing patients?
I think the UK government is failing patients. The government was wrong to raise expectations. It now has to put that right by delivering on the promises that it's made to the patients.
This cannabis revolution needs to be led by science, and so far it's been led by politics. And I think what people forget is that, you know, for many patients, including my sister, this is a life or death situation.
The Department of Health told us that this pattern of prescribing medical cannabis is quite normal, and that in most countries that have legalized the drug, most prescriptions are given through the private sector. They also said they need more evidence to prove that it works.
Campaigners were recently dealt a further blow after a healthcare watchdog said that a lot of medical cannabis products shouldn't be available on the NHS because they're not cost-effective and more clinical trials are needed.
Sadly, at the present time, the only way a patient can get a prescription for medical cannabis is through this clinic.
For now, people say they will be left suffering, in need of medicine that they can't afford.